This is not an urban legend. This isn't one of those stories passed around campfires, wrapped in exaggeration and teenage thrill. No, this happened in a real school, to real students, in Ohio, during a real lockdown. It was 2016, just a normal fall day. The leaves outside were the color of rust and fire. The air, dry, cold. The kind of day that felt quiet, almost too quiet, until it started. One moment, there were students in the halls, lockers slamming, friends laughing, teachers handing out detention slips. And the next, there were screams echoing through the corridors. Screams from people who, by all accounts, weren't supposed to be out there. The school went into lockdown. Fast. Doors slammed. Lights went off. Phones buzzed. And we waited like we were taught to. Quiet. Still. Eyes on the door. But something wasn't right. You could feel it, like the air had teeth. Something else was in the building. Something that didn't move like a person. Something that knew our names and used voices that didn't belong to it. What I saw that day still keeps me up at night. And if you're brave enough to listen, I'll tell you exactly what happened during the horrific Skinwalker attack inside my school. I grew up in a town most people wouldn't even find on a map without zooming all the way in. It's one of those little places in suburban Ohio. Clean streets, old houses, autumn trees that glow orange in October, and the same families living there for generations. Nothing weird ever happened here. No real crime, no big mysteries, just long winters, local football, and the occasional deer wandering into someone's yard. It was safe, or at least that's what we all believed. The town is called Tiffin, just west of the Sandusky River, surrounded by woods and fields, and bordered by roads that stretch into the kind of rural quiet that makes even silence feel heavy. I was a senior at the time, 17 years old. I had plans, college, music, getting out of Ohio. I was the kind of kid who didn't believe in ghost stories or native legends. Not because I was smarter than anyone. I just thought that stuff was for scary movies and late-night Reddit threads. Skinwalkers? I'd heard the word before, probably in a podcast or on YouTube. Something about Navajo shapeshifters, witches who could turn into animals. But we weren't in Arizona. We were in Ohio, middle of nowhere. Why would that kind of thing be here? The truth is, I didn't think much about it at all. Not until the lockdown. Not until the thing that shouldn't have been able to get inside did. The school itself was nothing special. 2 floors, brick exterior, 1960s build. Creaked in winter. The lights buzzed in certain hallways. It had that weird mix of comfort and decay you only find in public schools. Everyone joked it was haunted, of course. Every school has that rumor. But something did change that fall. Small things at first. A janitor refusing to clean the basement level after dark. Strange smells reported near the stairwell by the science wing. A substitute teacher who claimed she saw a student in the hallway who wasn't on the attendance roster. Tall, pale, twitching unnaturally. No one really took it seriously. We laughed it off. That's how things are in small towns. Rumors stay rumors, until something happens that turns them into warnings. October 14th, 2016. That was the day the school went into lockdown. Not for a drill, not for a threat, but because something got in. Something that looked like a person, sounded like one, but wasn't. And I know how crazy that sounds. I know what you're thinking: hallucination, stress, overactive imagination. But I lived through it. I saw it. And the only thing that kept me alive was staying silent. October 14th, 2016. It was a Monday. Nothing special. One of those overcast, bone-dry mornings where the sky looked like wet paper and the trees outside swayed with no wind. I remember walking into the school like I always did, earbuds in, hoodie up, half awake. The building smelled like old books and reheated cafeteria pizza. Like always. I didn't feel scared. I didn't feel anything. First period was history. We were supposed to be watching some grainy documentary on the Cold War, but the projector wasn't working. Second period, I had English, and halfway through, I noticed half the class was staring out the window. That's when we first saw it. Something down by the edge of the soccer field. At first glance, it looked like a dog. Big, black, mangy, maybe too far away to tell. But there was something wrong with the way it moved. It wasn't limping exactly. It was jerking forward, like its legs were too long and didn't belong to the same body. A few students laughed. Some of us joked it was a coyote. But coyotes don't stand still like that, for that long, just staring at a building full of people. The teachers brushed it off. One of them even said, "Probably just a stray. Keep working." But it stayed there, all through third period, watching, not pacing, not running, just staring. Around lunch, something changed. People started saying there was a weird smell in the halls near the south stairwell, like rotting meat and wet hair. One kid threw up in the bathroom near the library. A janitor came to check the vents, but didn't find anything. I remember walking past that area, and I'll never forget it. The smell hit like a punch. Thick and sour. Almost animal, but not just that. It smelled old. Like something dead had been dragged through the walls weeks ago and left to rot. That was the first time I got this tight feeling in my chest. Not fear exactly, but the kind of pressure you feel when you're somewhere you shouldn't be. Like the building itself was warning us. A little after 1:15, the lights began flickering in the science wing. Not all at once, just certain rooms. Then the clock in room 204 froze. Then the intercom beeped, but said nothing. Just static. It was around that time that Mrs. Halpern, one of the senior English teachers, told the office she heard voices in the hallway outside her door. Whispers. Not shouting. Not footsteps. Just someone whispering words she couldn't understand. She thought it was students playing a prank. But when she opened her door, no one was there. The hallway was empty, dead quiet. Then she noticed it. The same black shape. That same long-legged animal. Now inside the building. Standing just past the entrance to the gym. She said, and I quote, "It looked like a shadow that had bones inside it." That's when the PA came on. "Attention students and faculty. This is not a drill. I repeat, this is not a drill. Please initiate lockdown procedures immediately. Lock all doors. Stay silent. Do not open for anyone." You know how they always say, stay calm during emergencies? Yeah. That didn't happen. Some people started laughing, thought it was a prank. Others froze. But I remember my heart punching so hard in my chest I could barely hear. Because when that message played, it wasn't the normal voice. It wasn't the principal. It was someone else. Someone trying to sound like the principal. The voice was too slow, too deliberate, like it had practiced what to say, but couldn't get the tone right. My teacher didn't question it. She locked the door, shut off the lights, pulled the shades, told us to get down and be quiet. And then, we waited, for something none of us could explain. That was the last moment the day felt normal. After that, everything broke. The lights went off first. Not all of them, just enough to make the room feel like it was sinking. We sat in the corner, behind the teacher's desk, backs against the wall. No one spoke. Even the class clown, Tyler, was quiet. Everyone just watched the door. The lockdown rules are simple. Lock the door. Cover the windows. Stay silent. Wait for the all clear. We'd done it a dozen times before, drills mostly. But this didn't feel like a drill. Felt like hiding from something that already knew where we were. I remember checking my phone. 32% battery. No signal. I tried to text my mom. Just 2 words. School lockdown. But the message wouldn't send. I looked around the room. Everyone else was on their phones too. Then, one by one, people started looking confused. Then panicked. Their phones were dying. Rapidly. From 60% to 12% to 0 in less than a minute. Like something was draining them. Mine shut off completely. Just black screen. No warning. That's when we heard the knocking. Came from the hallway. Slow. Deliberate. 3 knocks on our classroom door. Then nothing. Our teacher, Mrs. Darby, held a finger to her lips. "Don't move," she whispered. Her hand trembled. The doorknob turned. Slowly. But it was locked. It rattled for a moment. Then it stopped. Someone whispered from the hallway, "Let me in." But the voice didn't sound real. Sounded like a recording, flat, hollow, like it had heard the words once and was repeating them. Then the footsteps faded. We thought that was the worst of it. It wasn't. A girl near the window, Kara, whispered that she saw something in the hallway. "It was on the ceiling," she said. "It was crawling upside down." We all thought she was panicking, maybe hallucinating. But the look on her face, I'll never forget it. She wasn't lying. She was shaking, whispering the Lord's Prayer under her breath. Another knock, but not at the door. This one came from above us. The ceiling tiles creaked. Light dust fell. Something was moving inside the ceiling. That's when I heard it. A whisper, right behind my ear. My name, whispered in my grandmother's voice. My grandmother had died 2 years earlier. I hadn't heard her voice since the funeral. And yet, there it was, whispering through the dark. Calm, gentle, the exact way she used to call me in the mornings. "Sweetheart, open the door." That's what she said. I didn't move, couldn't, because somehow I knew whatever was speaking wasn't her. It wasn't even human. At that point we heard screams. Real ones, not far off. Then the intercom came back on. Static. A low, rasping voice. This time it was trying to mimic a teacher's voice. But it kept repeating the same line. "Remain calm, remain calm, remain calm," over and over, like a broken toy that had learned one sentence. Something banged near the library. Not a knock. A crash, like someone throwing a desk through a window. Then the sound of running, and a scream that ended abruptly. A few minutes later, maybe 5, maybe 10, no one really knows, someone noticed the blood. Right outside the library door. A streak. Thin at first like a cut, then heavier. Leading down the hallway. Mrs. Darby cracked our door open an inch. Just enough to peek. She didn't say a word. She just stared. When she turned back to us, she looked pale. "Don't look out," she whispered. "Don't open this door. Not for anyone." I remember her hand. She was holding her phone, but it was upside down, and she was pressing the buttons like she didn't know what it was anymore. Then we heard her name, whispered from the vent near the ceiling. Over and over. "Darby, Darby, come here." She backed away from the vent. And that's when she started to cry. That thing, whatever it was in the vents. Crawling, mimicking, pulling voices out of our heads. It knew things. It didn't sound right, but it was close enough to trick you, if you weren't paying attention. Then something truly terrifying happened. Someone in the class screamed. We turned around and Mrs. Darby was gone. The door was still locked. Windows still shut. She just wasn't there anymore. No sound. No movement. 1 second she was crouched near the desk, whispering a prayer. The next she was gone. We didn't know whether to move, whether to call out. Some students started crying. One kid was rocking back and forth, covering his ears. Another one passed out, and I just sat there, staring at the door, listening, waiting for the voice to say my name again. I knew it would, and when it did, I wasn't sure if I had the strength to ignore it a second time. At some point, we realized no one was coming. No police, no announcements, no rescue. We waited in that locked classroom for what felt like hours, but I think it was maybe 20 minutes? Time stopped making sense after Mrs. Darby disappeared. And then it got worse. The thing in the vents, whatever it was, started repeating the names of students in our class. Not shouting, whispering. "Kara, Liam, Tyler, come out." Said my name too, but not in my voice. It used my mother's. The exact way she says it when she's angry. It even stuttered at the same syllable she does when she's nervous. That's when we knew it had been watching us for a long time. That it was intelligent, and it was playing with us. We couldn't stay there. A few of us knew the building well. Seniors who'd stayed after hours for drama, sports, janitorial work. One of them, Jace, said there was a service hallway behind the kitchen that led to the boiler room, and maybe out to the parking lot. It was a long shot, but sitting still felt worse. So 5 of us made the decision. Me, Jace, Kara, Liam, and a girl named Erin. We stacked desks quietly under the front window, broke the latch with a chair leg, and crawled out into the hall, staying low, completely silent. The hallway was wrong. That's the only word I have for it. The air felt heavy, like it was full of sand. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, flickering just enough to throw your balance off. And somewhere, just beyond the turn near the main office, we could hear it moving. We stayed against the wall, ducked past broken lockers, and slipped through a side door into the cafeteria. Chairs were overturned, food trays still on tables. Someone had dropped an entire bin of lunch boxes near the far exit. The smell from earlier, like wet fur and blood, was stronger here. Jace opened the kitchen door. We went in. The kitchen was freezing, literally colder than it should have been. Our breath fogged in the air. Metal counters were smeared with something. Not blood, not grease, just a dark, viscous smear, like something had dragged its body across every surface. We moved fast, ducking into the back prep hallway. It was pitch black. No lights, just the red exit sign glowing near the back door to the boiler corridor. The moment we stepped into that hallway, the smell hit us like a wall. Rot, bone, animal fur, and something worse, something sour and chemical, like a body that's been left in bleach. The boiler room was worse. It looked like no one had been down there in decades. Rusted pipes, a busted fuse panel with wires hanging like veins. But the worst part wasn't the room. It was what was inside it. On the floor were bones. Dozens of them. Some small, like animal bones. Others longer, human-sized. They were charred in places, cracked, stacked like someone had been building something with them or collecting. And on the wall, deep claw marks, four-fingered, scratched through the metal locker doors like they were cardboard. Some of them looked recent. We backed away slowly. That's when we saw it. In the far corner of the room, something moved. A shadow uncoiled itself. And I swear, it stood taller than any human I've ever seen. It stepped into the red glow of the emergency light. And what we saw, I still can't explain. Its arms were too long. Its legs were bent the wrong way, like a deer that had broken its knees and kept walking anyway. Its face changed. From one second to the next, it wore our faces. Each of us. In flashes. 1 second it looked like Aaron, the next like Liam's older brother. Then, like Jace's father, who died in a car crash the year before. His eyes glowed. Not with light but with something else. Hunger. Rage. Intelligence. And then it spoke. Not loud. Just loud enough for us to hear it clearly. It said, "I've been here. Longer than the school has." His voice was all of ours. Layered. Echoing. Like a chorus of the people we'd trusted our whole lives. Mashed together. And then it moved. Fast. We ran. Through the pipes. Up a maintenance ladder. I slipped. Fell. Hit my shoulder. And suddenly, I was alone. The others were gone. Maybe ahead. Maybe not. I found a crawl space. Narrow, pitch black. I pulled myself in. Hands scraped. Knees bloody. It was the only place I could hide. In the duct, I heard it again. The voices. But this time, they were different. Slower. Garbled. Like someone was playing a recording of a voice backward. My voice. My mother's. My friends. They were all in there, reversed, warped. Like it was trying to unmake us. Pull our voices apart and stitch them into something new. That's when I realized, this thing didn't just wear faces. It collected people. And it wanted me next. And that's when I heard it again. My name. From directly inside the vent behind me. Closer than ever. No mistake this time. And it wasn't whispering anymore. It was smiling. I stayed in the crawl space longer than I can remember. No light. No sound. Just my own breathing. And the occasional groan of the building settling above me. The voices had gone quiet. But that didn't comfort me. It made things worse. Because that meant it knew I was alone. And it was waiting. I started to move. Slowly. Backward through the duct system. Every inch scraped my hands, my back, my knees. My eyes adjusted to the dark. but I still couldn't see more than a few feet ahead. Then, it spoke again. Not from behind, from ahead. It said, "You're the last one. I like your face best." His voice had changed again. This time it was mine, perfectly mimicked. Every syllable, every breath, like hearing a recording of myself, but cold, emotionless, mechanical. It was playing me back to myself. Like a broken mirror. I crawled faster. My body scraped through jagged metal edges. Then suddenly the duct widened into a vertical shaft. I dropped, landed in the old maintenance corridor, just above the gym. And that's when I saw it, face to face. It was standing in the hallway, its head nearly grazing the ceiling, its limbs twisted at unnatural angles, like a spider mimicking a person. But the worst part wasn't the body. It was the face. It wore mine, my eyes, my teeth, my exact shirt. Everything down to the scrape on my forehead from earlier. It stared at me and smiled. I froze. Then something hit me, not physically, but in my chest. A wave of cold, like grief or shame. And I knew, in that moment, what it was doing. It was feeding, not on blood, not on flesh, on fear, on memory, on identity. It wore faces because it didn't have its own anymore. And to survive, it needed ours. That's when I remembered something. Something most of us had forgotten. In the early 90s, a student vanished from this school. A senior. His name was Evan Holt. There were rumors, sure, that he got lost in the woods, that he ran away, that he was taken. But no body was ever found. Only his shoes, left outside the gym entrance. One facing the door, one facing the woods. Some kids said they still saw him. During winter, in the snow near the tree line, just standing there staring at the school. A janitor once said he heard Evan calling his name through the vents. 20 years after he vanished. We thought it was a ghost story, something older students told to scare freshmen. But now, standing there, facing the thing that wore my face, I understood. Evan never left, or at least, something took his form. And now it wanted mine. I backed away slowly, followed step by step. Its legs bent backward, toes tapping softly like claws. Tilted its head, my head, and smiled wider. And then it whispered, "Say goodbye to yourself." I shut my eyes. I don't know why, maybe instinct, but I started to recite something. Prayer. Not even a religious one, just the only words that felt solid in that moment. Something my grandmother used to say when I had nightmares. No shadow can steal who I am. No shape can silence my name. Over and over. I said it aloud, through my teeth. Over the sound of the Skinwalker's breathing. No shadow can steal who I am. No shape can silence my name. The thing twitched, like something was pulling it apart from the inside. His face glitched like a corrupted video. 1 second it was me, the next Kara. Then my mother. Then someone I didn't recognize. And then, the school bell rang. Loud. Sudden. The real, automated bell, the kind that ends classes. And just like that, the lights came back on. Fluorescence buzzed overhead. Emergency exits unlocked. My phone lit up with missed calls. Battery suddenly restored. The Skinwalker was gone. Not like it ran. It just wasn't there anymore. As if the moment fear stopped controlling me, it lost interest. I stumbled out through the gym doors. Found 2 teachers. Security. Ambulance lights outside. They told me the lockdown was over. But they never explained what triggered it. No alarm. No intruder. Just a precaution due to a power fault. I asked about my classmates, the others who tried to escape. They said they found 4 students unconscious in the cafeteria freezer. But none of them remembered anything. Not even me. But I remember. Every second. I saw it. I stood inches from something ancient. Something that wears our skin like clothes. Something that feeds off our fear, our names, ourselves. And I know now, it hasn't left. It's still in that school. Or maybe, it's in every school. Every town where fear lingers. Where trauma festers quietly under the floorboards. Waiting for someone to forget who they are. So it can wear them too. They found me just before dawn. I was curled up in the faculty parking lot, shaking, covered in dust and blood that wasn't mine. Paramedics kept asking me questions. Were you attacked? Did you see someone? Was there a weapon? I couldn't answer. I tried to explain about the voice, the duct, the figure in the hallway. One of the cops took notes at first, but after a while he stopped writing. Just stared at me like I'd cracked under pressure. When I asked if they checked the security footage, they said the cameras had been wiped. All of them. No backup. Just static across every timestamp between 11:32 p.m. and 3:47 a.m. Almost exactly the window we were trapped inside. The school reopened 3 days later. No announcement. No warning. Just back to normal. Like it never happened. Except it did. Everyone knew something had gone wrong. There were rumors. Whispers in the hallway. A janitor claimed he saw claw marks inside a locked electrical closet. One student, Kara, hasn't spoken a single word since that night. Nothing. Not in class. Not at home. They say she just stares at the vents now, like she's waiting for something to crawl out of them. As for me, I dropped out a few weeks later, finished the semester online, got my diploma in the mail. I don't go near schools anymore, not even to visit friends, not even to vote. Something changed in me that night, something subtle, like a thread got pulled loose in my mind, and now nothing quite sits right. I still hear things sometimes, especially late at night. Whispers in familiar voices. Ones that should be impossible. My dead grandmother. My own voice. Kara's scream. Echoing inside the walls. They come and go. But I don't respond. That's how it finds you. You let it know you're afraid. And it puts your skin on next. I wish this was fake. I wish I dreamed it. Or made it up for internet points. But if this were a lie, I'd sleep better. I wouldn't keep a flashlight under my pillow. I wouldn't jump every time the air vent creaks. What I saw, whatever it wasn't human. It wasn't pretending to be human. It was mocking it. And the worst part? I don't think it ever left. Not really. That school still stands. Kids still walk its hallways. And if you listen closely, if you're alone after dark, you might hear someone whisper your name, using a voice they were never supposed to have. If you've ever seen something like this, something impossible, something wrong hiding inside the normal, tell someone. You're not crazy. You're not alone. Whatever this thing is, it doesn't want to be seen. But every now and then, it slips up. And when it does, it feeds off silence. I shared my story because silence didn't save us that night. But maybe, just maybe, awareness can. So tell your story. Comment below if you've experienced something strange, especially during a school lockdown, even if it sounds insane, even if no one believes you at first. I didn't believe either, until it crawled out of the ceiling and said my name.